Welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton. Every week, having a conversation that you can join when I'm talking with a business communication expert. And through our conversation, you can learn tips and strategies that will help you in your business communication. Glad that you've joined us today. Our guest today is Dawn Echols. Dawn is a clinically trained and licensed mental health professional who works with both individual adults and couples about problems of living. Her specialties include anxiety, management and personal growth goals, as well as mental health issues. Her couples specialty is available to both traditional and non-traditional partnerships, including LGBTQ. Couples exploring therapy options may be seeking enhanced connection, reduced aggression, better conflict resolution, or want help healing relationships from past problems. Ms. Echols is the owner and executive director of Dawning Phoenix, a small private practice based in Gainesville, Georgia. Her practice offers in-person and online counseling options. Dawn considers it a privilege to help clients with personal growth, improved life satisfaction, and enhanced relationships. And as we'll repeat later on at the end of the show, for more information, you can visit her website at dawningphoenix.com. It's a pleasure now to welcome Dawn Echols. Hello, Dawn.
Good afternoon, Bill. It's so nice to see you again.
Terrific to have you on as a guest, and you've been a guest as well on my North Georgia Business Radio X, which I co-host with Bo Henderson. Happy to have you here again. Dawn, this is a time of year when many people have made New Year's resolutions. And practically every year, I suppose, it's inevitable that there are a number of us who have great intentions. We go through what we think are the right steps in assessing what we need to do differently during the new year. We probably followed the advice of professional leaders like you. We write down our goals, and yet somehow, a few weeks or a month into the new year, those goals have sort of faded away. We're not sticking with it. Why is that? We're well-intentioned. We think we're committed. Why is it we don't stick with our goals?
Well, first of all, as human beings, we are creatures of habit, Bill. So the habits that we've had the longest are going to take the longest to change. Sometimes when they talk about going through major transitions in your life, they'll say give yourself a month for every year that you might have experienced either a relationship or an event, even with a job. It can take time to adjust to a transition. As humans, we need change. One of the reasons that we've survived as the human race for this long is because we are adaptable. So it's good for us to do that, but we all are creatures of habit. So, and they call it homeostasis in psychology, where the brain seeks to find what it's always done. It conserves energy very well, so it likes habit. So the way we do that with our resolutions or our goals is to change those habits, but that takes consistent applied effort.
It's interesting to me, you talk about sort of a recovery time. And it reminds me of when a relative of mine was hospitalized. And they said for every week that you spend in a hospital, no matter how healthy you were to begin with, for every week, it's probably going to take several months to recover.
That is correct. And of course, young children and young people, the younger you are, the quicker you bounce back. In therapy, play therapists that work with children often tell parents that the children are more resilient than the parent realizes when the parent is able to provide that child with the right kind of help or support or assistance, be it learning, emotional, or transitioning themselves, starting a new school, starting a new grade, whatever it might be that's going on, children bounce back really quick. The older we are, the longer we need. So the more it takes for us to be, I think, almost gentle with ourselves as adults. Our primary responsibility as adults for the majority of our adulthood is responsibility to others, and that includes the responsibility we have to our employers, or to the fact that we need to make a living if we don't have an actual boss, if we're self-employed, for instance. And that's all the more reasons why writing our goals down and having a plan for how we're going to implement those, but also being gentle with ourselves, kind of being realistic while still being idealistic. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's not.
Well, in other words, I think you're saying that it's great to set a goal, but it should be an achievable goal. For example, financially, if I were to say, I'm going to make $1 million this next year, that's probably not very likely. But if I were to say I'm going to increase my income by $10,000 or $20,000, possibly that's achievable. So I like the phrase you're saying, don't beat yourself up because you haven't achieved something. And one of the problems may be that it's great to have ambitions, but it's possible we were aiming too high.
And Mary Kay Ash of Mary Kay Cosmetics, when she was alive, used to say, shoot for the moon and you will land among the stars. And in that phrase, it's the implication is there's success there, and that we can stretch. I remember one of my first managers, who was a real great role model for me. She said to me one day when we were setting quarterly sales goals that we had to, she said, I don't want to set you up to fail by setting them so high, but we've got to stretch you a little. They have to stretch you. You have to feel like they're almost not quite, so that you'll reach for them and work for them.
I think I could compare this to one of my lifelong avocations, and that's golf. If a golfer were to have a New Year's resolution, let's say that golfer is shooting around 90, which would be bogeying practically every hole, or every hole, in fact, that would be the average. If that golfer were to say, well, this next year, I'm going to shoot in the high 60s and low 70s. I'm going to improve my score by about 20 points. And that's unrealistic. If you were to say, I'm going to take lessons, I'm going to practice, I'm going to be out there more often, I'm going to learn from experts, and I'm going to whittle my score from 90 down to 82 or 3, that's realistic. If you say, I've got to shoot par every time, that would just be too discouraging, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. We're shooting for perfection. And in the words of a famous pianist, concert pianist that I met some years back, her name was Ruth, and she'd written a book about, she debuted in Carnegie Hall at the age of 8 years old. She was 85 when I met her. She came and conducted a master class for those of us who were pianists playing classical music at Georgia State University. And I remember her putting her little, she was very small. She put her hands together. She played for us. It was incredible. 85 years old, and could just leave you breathless with her performance. We got to sit right on the stage with her for this master class. She put her hands together talking about performing at Carnegie Hall and all over the world. And she said, oh, 80% is a good day. 95%, that is a very good day.
It reminds me of what I tell my speech coaching clients. I've done this for years. On a tip sheet that I give them, I have several points that I want them to remember as we're beginning the coaching. And one is, I put, don't try to be perfect. And I purposely misspell the word perfect. I really botch it. They can read that the word is perfect, but they get the point. I couldn't even spell the word perfect. So how can I achieve it? So already we've said, don't set a goal that isn't challenging, but also set a goal that is achievable.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
They talk, yes. In goal setting, you make it achievable. You make it realistic, but has stretch. You have to break it down into parts, and you have to have the accountability for it.
I'd go back to what you said earlier about the difference between the very young and those who are, we might say, who are more mature in age. The very young are so idealistic. And of course, we need that. We need that because idealistic people keep changing the world. But eventually in life, we learn, yes, be idealistic, but you got to sprinkle some realism in there as well.
What is that famous saying that you have your feet firmly on your ground, even if your head is in the clouds? It's
Excellent.
yes, and it's so true because the best sales teams that I've ever been on always involved a combination of people with both talent and experience. You need your younger, you need your creative, you need those who are bringing new ideas, who may not have the experience, but they have these wonderful creative approaches. And then you need the people who are kind of your solid performers who know what they're doing, have lots of energy, but a lot like pretty well grounded at that point. And then you have your people that have been with the team for a long time. They're actually the intellectual equity of a team. You need that. I can remember the teams that I worked on, you got to have that person's office or email or phone that you reach out and say to them, hey, after 20, 25, 30 years of doing this, they often have an answer in their head for you that doesn't require anything but a moment of their time. And they have that to offer, and that's what they contribute to teams. And you need a percentage of that as well as you need the other two groups. And so goal setting needs to take into account what is it we're trying to accomplish? Where are we in our lives? Not just this year, but what decade, and what are our long, mid, and short-term goals? Is there something we want to accomplish in January this year or in the first quarter through March? But is there something we want to accomplish, and maybe it is going to take through December of 2020, but we need to meet certain things throughout the time period. So some goals, there may be a goal we have for 5 years out. One of the people in Gainesville that hired me when I first started in psychology, he had a long-term goal for his retirement, and he was tracking his progress towards that, not because he was not helping people and not interested, but he was he had that business side to him that said, hey, I'm self-employed, and if I'm going to accomplish this, I have to have a plan. And one of the great things about his plan is it left a legacy with the professionals he hired. That business was bought by some of the employees, and that legacy has continued, and each of us have gone on by giving back to us as he was seeing that his career would, that part of it at least, would come to a close. He gave to each of us, and that has continued. And then he moved on to the next stage of his goal setting, which was to enjoy his retirement, his grandchildren, and other things in his life.
What you're saying there is we have some immediate goals, we have some long range goals, and for one thing, if we don't take care of the intermediate goals, then we won't get to the
Yeah.
long range. How important is it to have partners? And I'm not talking about necessarily professional partners, but maybe peer partners to assist us in carrying through with our resolutions. I'll give you an example. I was with a nephew of mine recently. He runs 20 to 30 miles a week. He's a very avid exerciser. He told me one of the keys is that he's got an accountability group. He's got 4 or 5 guys who do the running with him. And if, for example, there's one day he would feel like, I just don't feel like being there today, he's got those guys to stare him down and say, where were you and why weren't you here? So setting goals and getting to them is not necessarily just an individual process, is it?
No. And one of the things that when I work with people in clinical psychotherapy with their counseling is I work from what's called an Adlerian approach. And it's one of the clinical theories that a therapist might adopt. We all work within a foundation of where we're coming from as therapists. And one of the tenets of that theory is that social interest is a key important ingredient for the human condition for us to feel that we have life satisfaction. And so social interest, we have that group belonging need. It's called, in Maslow's hierarchy of need, he says we have this need for belonging is like our third most important need in that hierarchy out of the 5. And so we need to feel like we're a part. And ancient societies needed one another to survive. Nowadays, we don't think of it that way because a lot of our modern conveniences and things like that, we're not primitive societies in that sense anymore, but we still are social creatures who have a psychological need for other people. And I think that's one of the reasons that accountability, it's not the only reason by far, but it's one of the reasons that accountability is so valuable with meeting goals, is that answering to others, that receiving encouragement, that having to say to someone, I did or did not do what I said I would do today. When we speak our goals out loud, in addition to once we write them down, having a conversation like you and I are having today, that's what you mean with the peers. Peer support is critical. It's important to us. Adler called it community feeling, to feel that we're a part of something. Your nephew is part of a group that has a shared common purpose, and that lightens the load and increases the energy towards the task.
The most successful athletic teams are those who really work together as a team. The most successful businesses are those that work together as a team. When there's a lot of internal strife, when there's division, when there's competition instead of cooperation, that business can't be very strong.
No.
We have time for one final question. Suppose that our listeners follow the wonderful advice that you've given, and yet somewhere along next November, they look over their checklist and they really haven't accomplished all they want to. There's a tendency to berate yourself, but we really have to have a way of forgiving ourselves for not getting where we wanted entirely.
Absolutely. And it goes back to the shoot for the moon, you'll land among the stars. That's what you're describing, Bill, is critical self-talk, where we criticize ourselves. Life throws us challenges. Sometimes they can be quite steep challenges. Loss is a good example. When people experience a loss, either a loss of a relationship, loss of a significant person in their lives, loss of a job, any of those losses can take a toll on a person. And we have to be gentle with ourselves that says, okay, I think of it as a balance between gentle and still wanting to achieve and reach. To be motivated for achievement is also good. We need that too. We need to feel that we're doing something worthwhile, meaningful, productive, contributing. Mindfulness talks about that when you're washing dishes, be present washing dishes. Enjoy the process, the warm water on your hands, the feel of soap as it bubbles in the sink, the feel of a dish, just all of those different things, the sensory experience. And in our very distracted world, we're constantly looking to be distracted or entertained or involved rather than present in the moment. And loss is like that. It's hard to be present in something that's painful. So if people that are listening today are going through some sort of transition, then that is something to take into account with your goal setting. Your goal setting this year may need to involve, how am I going to take care of myself? How am I going to feel healthy? How am I going to be able to be positive? How am I going to be okay when it's not always sunshine and roses?
I bet I'm going to paraphrase something you've probably told your clients, and that is, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
Absolutely, we can't. So it's important to try to focus on that balance between caring for ourselves and making sure we're healthy and well to have something to give from, and having care for others as well. And in what way are we thoughtfully, mindfully caring for both ourselves and others in the process of the joy, actually, of achievement?
Don, as fascinating and helpful as your comments have been, we're going to need to draw this to a conclusion. I know people will want to contact you, so please give us your contact information.
Yes. If you want to learn more about the counseling practice, dawningphoenix.com is the website. And you can also call me directly at 678-965-9591. Again, that number is 678-965-9591, or you can call the number on the website as well.
Thank you, Don. You're a tremendous resource and asset and help. And I know you will have people reach out as a result of this conversation. And now that you've given your contact information, I'm happy to give mine. Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to go there, check my services for organizations and leaders, and then give me a call to talk with me about your communication challenges and problems, and I'll help you find a solution. Dawn, any closing comments on this topic of resolutions?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity to offer a recap, Bill. I would say write down what it is you want to accomplish. Consider the different areas of your life that you may want to either focus or work on, what needs to be supported and cared for versus what needs to be pushed or changed. Prioritize those, and then decide what you want to work on in increments weekly, daily, monthly, quarterly, as well as annually.
Very fine. Thank you. And thank all of you who have joined us for this edition of the Biz Communication Show. I'm Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, your host, inviting you to be with us again next week.